All right, welcome back, everyone. 2020, Happy New Year. We're starting geometry, and so our first lesson is kind of trying to figure out how to visualize geometry, especially three-dimensional shapes. So we're going to talk about a few different things. First of all, nets. So a net is a way to visualize a three-dimensional shape as if it's folded out. So if you think about like a cardboard box that you get from Amazon or whatever, if you cut all along all the edges and you just folded out that box, that would be a net, right? There's lots of different ways to draw a net, lots of different ways you could cut that box, right? But if you just laid the box flat and let every side of the box lay flat on the ground, one way or the other, that would be a net. Okay, so you can see, like for example here, if I folded along this edge and this edge, then these two sides would meet, right? And if I fold it along this edge, then this side would meet this side, right? And so forth and so on, right? If I fold it along this edge and this edge, then these two sides would meet. Okay, so those are nets. Then we have isometric drawings. So an isometric drawing is a 3D drawing, kind of the traditional 3D drawing for the most part, except it's a little more specific maybe than all of them. But you draw vertical lines as you normally would, but then you draw your horizontal lines at a 30-degree angle, right? And so you have something that kind of looks like that, right? Now, this might not be exactly 30 degrees, but basically that's an isometric drawing to some extent, right? Now, you can't see all the sides in an isometric drawing, right? You can only see the top, the front, and the side, right? You can't see the bottom or the back of the figures. Okay. All right. And so here you see an isometric drawing, and here you can see the dotted lines that show the back if you need to see the back or the bottom or things like that. But they're, yeah, anyway. And then this would be an orthographic drawing, which is showing separate views of the top straight on, or the front straight on, or the right straight on, or whatever. Okay. All right, and these lines here are representing where you have, sometimes they're dotted, but that represents where you have some kind of something protruding or going back into the figure. So there's a difference in depth there, right? So like in this case, if we're looking at this from this perspective, right? So we would see that this part comes out a little further than this part does, right? Because this part comes out further than this, right? So that's kind of what that shows us. All right. So mainly what we're doing in this lesson is just identifying and just practice drawing some of these things, but mainly identifying like which is which, and just kind of getting to know different ways to draw these shapes. So here we have a figure, a three-dimensional figure that they give us. It's a rectangular prism. We'll learn some of that stuff later on. But it says label the net with its dimensions. So there's a few different ways we can draw this, right? So let me show you a couple. And basically, like I was saying before I show you, is we're going to cut along some of these edges, right? So maybe I cut along this edge, and maybe this edge, right? And maybe this edge and this edge. Now I'm just going to fold it out, right? So maybe I'll do that. And what that would look like is this right here, right? Or one of these, right? I kind of made it more like this one, where if I cut around this, then this folds out, right? And then this back piece here can lay flat, right? And do the same thing with the other side, and then the whole box kind of unfolds. So here's another way to draw it, and then there's a few other ways you could probably draw it as well. So that's how we would draw a net. And it says label the net with the dimensions, right? So so make sure you include those as well. So here we want to draw an isometric version of this cube, right? And so the reason this is not isometric to begin with, we do have the verticals, right? And so those are good. But remember, we need the horizontals to be at 30-degree angles, right? So this is not 30 degrees. This is parallel with the horizontal. So we want each of these to be horizontal. So an isometric version of this would be this right here. Okay. So you can see that each of these horizontal lines are drawn at a 30-degree angle. So you can use graph paper to do that. When we get to our in-class lesson, I'll have some graph paper or some dotted paper like that you can use to draw if you need it. And there's other ways to do this, right? Depending on what perspective you want to draw this from, you could there are some other versions that would get you full credit, right? All right, so here we're given an isometric drawing, and we want to make an orthographic drawing, right? So one thing you have to do when you're making orthographic, or if you're looking at an isometric drawing and you're trying to go to orthographic, is try to figure out which way all the sides are facing, right? For me, it's always kind of one of those things that you have to kind of kind of get everything straight, because sometimes it can fool you a little bit. So here I'm going to look at the top. So I'm going to draw the top, or just kind of identify the top places, right? So these are all top faces. Okay, you can shade them in if you like. Okay, so then I can draw the top view, right? Then maybe the left facing faces. So it would be these ones here, right? Okay, and then maybe the right facing. And so this kind of gives me an idea of all the different sides, right? So that now I can draw this. Okay, so we saw the top. If we're looking at it straight down, it's basically just kind of a plus sign. If we're looking at the front, we saw that we have those faces. I think those purple faces that we saw on the left. And then on the right, we had the red faces. So that's what it would look like. All right, here we're just trying to identify which one is isometric, which one is orthographic, which one is a net, which one is none, or or which combination of those that we have here. So for A, that's a net, right? It's all the sides folded out. For B, we have a view of all the different angles or all the different perspectives, and so that's going to be orthographic. For C, we can see that we have a three-dimensional drawing where we have 30-degree angles for all the horizontals. So that's the isometric. And then for D, kind of looks like it could be isometric, but the horizontals are drawn horizontally, so that's not going to be isometric, so this is none. All right, it is a representation of a three-dimensional figure, but it's not any of the ones that we talked about specifically. All right, another example here, we're trying to match which three-dimensional figure goes with its net. Okay, so we have our three-dimensional figures here, and then our nets down here. I'm trying to match them up. So 6, what does 6 go with? That's right, goes with this one here, right? So if we cut along these edges and we folded it out, this gives us all the faces and the bases, right? 7, that one goes with this one here, right? So we can see we have the triangles cut out. And there's, remember, different ways we could cut it, but that's one way. That one is the one that represents number 7. And then 8, process of elimination, but also that one fits, right? If we cut along these edges here, laid those out, we would have 3 triangles all around this base triangle here, right? All right. Hopefully this is making sense. Bring questions to class if you have them. But hopefully this is pretty intuitive. All right, so here we're gonna we want to draw a net for this figure. So remember, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but think about where do you want to cut along the edges, right? So you could probably cut. You don't want to cut the whole base out, but you probably want to cut it along, all but one of its edges, and then you want to cut all these other edges, right? So I'm going to cut this one, all those, right? Something like that. So that would give us something along these lines, right? So these are the bases, right? And then we unfold all the sides, or these smaller sides here. We get these ones. And then we have the bigger faces, or bigger sides, right? All right, so that covers it. So bring questions to class if you have them, and or email me or message me on the Google Voice number, and get ready to come to class and work on some of these examples and practice some of these type of problems.